Hey guys, Brass Facts here, in a corner of a random empty room, not at all creepy whatsoever. It's time for another penannual, I think that's a word, penannual PDW video. Sorry, not sorry. Not only is this technically a PDW, and this technically is a PDW, but also somehow this is a PDW. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about different types of PDW, their classification, their utility, how they can be used, and also kind of their limitations in scenarios where you don't really want to use one.
For those that are stuck in the Ouroborean loop of checking Instagram and YouTube on big screen, and then you turn that off and then instinctively pull out small screen and look at Instagram and YouTube again, you're probably aware that 9-Hole Reviews has already made a video on this. And for a good bit of time, I was okay at just referencing that. But as I've been working on a large batch of 300 Blackout PDW-centric content, the more I try to reference the 9-Holes video, the more it becomes clear that video is not quite a good fit for this type of content. The video is great, mind you, but it is kind of more of a classification video from a historic or feature perspective versus what I need for my purposes, which is more of a classification based off of size and different breakpoints in utility. So, while Henry's is technically the correct video, I find, at least for my purposes, I kind of need my own, just so I can be a little more short in explanation in future videos instead of just being very verbose. So yeah, an entire Brass Facts video. Before starting out, we kind of need to readjust the question of what is PDW and why PDW. While I have covered this to a great degree, it bears slight rehashing. The what part is probably a little bit more complicated. In short, it's a personal defense weapon that isn't a handgun, that has made large concessions in lethality and usability to be smaller, and that's ultimately it. The why PDW question is a bit more interesting. We often bring a handgun with us as our standard defensive tool, but there are potential scenarios where we want more than a handgun. While this is hard to imagine in our cushy first world lives, it doesn't take much of a look around our international neighborhood to see cases where a handgun is going to distinctly be what we would consider undergunned. While we would love to bring a rifle, we are not a military, and bringing a rifle to a situation very often is going to cause more problems than it solves, especially since in a civilian scenario, augmentation in firepower tends to be proactive in nature, not reactive. That is, we expect something might happen, but 95% of the time, something will not happen. And while most of the time the policy prescription is if a 5% chance of something occurring exists, or even a 2% chance, is just don't go, unfortunately life doesn't always work that way. And as we've seen, once again in the proverbial neighborhood, sometimes society can get bad enough that we want this extra firepower, but things haven't quite gotten bad enough that you can just skip work without getting fired.
This video, and honestly this channel, was made possible by Venture Surplus. As you guys know, this channel is now full-time. There's no other way really to make a video with very high round counts every single week without support from, other sources, sponsors if you will. And Venture Surplus has been sponsoring this channel for about 2 years now. So yeah, thank you Venture Surplus for making this whole journey possible. I appreciate it. If you, the viewer, need to go buy some surplus stuff, I think you know the deal by now. Venture Surplus sells surplus stuff. Due to the nature of surplus stuff, take a shot every time I say surplus, they have sort of a rotating cast of product, right? They get a bunch in all at once, it sells out, and then that product is gone until they can find it again, right? There is no stable supply chain for a lot of this stuff. So consider checking them out, once a week. Don't need to buy something every week, though they sure would love that. But if you see something cool, be sure to grab it, because it might not be there next week. Alright, thank you Venture Surplus, thanks for all the good times, thanks for buying my burger at SHOT Show. Back to the video.
If I could bring something to the table, so to speak, most scenarios I would bring something like this, and if I could bring this, I'd be happy. I would not feel outgunned. Shit, Jeff Gerwich, a great channel by the way, has mentioned that when he was in SOF, he considered something like this, in his case a Mark 18, as essentially analogous or outright a PDW, where the rifle was mostly just for defensive usage, and his actual weapon of choice was, saws, crew-served weapons, and raw condensed taxpayer dollars known as a GBU launch from an F-16 or an F-18. But from our perspective, that doesn't really make any sense, nor do we have that capability, and it tracks about as well as why bother learning CQB when you can just throw a hand grenade.
Hop, what the fuck is that?
You gotta stop complaining about it. It's feeling very targeted by your harassment.
It's shooting well too. That's the thing. His Hop's performing very well with it. It's a they them gun. What's that gun's pronouns? She it?
5 and 7.
Yeah. All right, load big ready.
So, a rifle is a bit much. We need a smaller, more compact weapon that has traded some lethality and usability for size. A PDW it is. In my classification, the PDW is the same as most would imagine a PDW. Your PCCs, your Crinks, your Honey Badgers, all of them are considered PDWs. So with the standard PDW, we've shaved off, give or take, 4 to 6 inches over a standard, say 5.56 fighting rifle, especially when we remove the suppressor from the equation. As such, we're able to enable a number of things that the regular rifle struggles with, we'll just say. This PDW right here, this Hyena, is a great on-the-road travel gun, be it in something like my van or the passenger seat during a long road trip and then motel. It does double duty as a perfectly adequate 300 Blackout Sentry style gun with notable but not major velocity loss over a 10-inch 300 Blackout setup, and it's just kind of more convenient in the smaller form factor. And while this gun ultimately doesn't meet any size breakpoints, the slight reduction in size does make it a lot less of a hassle in a lot of these roles that are traditionally associated with military PDW usage. And that's exactly how I use it. But this lack of major size breakpoint, breaks, at the end of the day means it's essentially just a small rifle. And as soon as you leave the house or the car, everyone's gonna know you have a small rifle. The really only hope of utility is bag carry, where, at least unlike an AR-15, it can generally fit in the bag without having to separate the upper and lower receiver, which is a huge pain in the ass if you've ever tried it. But even here, it's just sort of a uncomfortable, lumpy mess that can fit the rifle and basically nothing else. And while sometimes that's all you really need, to just bring a bag with the express purpose of bringing a rifle, most of the time people are not okay with just bringing a bag with just a rifle. So while certainly more capable, in most scenarios it's just not going to be present should game day ever come. So let's move on to the traditional PDW concept, to something that I think is a little bit more relevant for the civilian, something that requires far less cope to actually bring and then deploy. A PDW K. A PDW K is actually something the industry sort of unintentionally acknowledges being a sort of short variant of a pistol caliber carbine. So we have the MPX K, the APC-9 K, the MP5 K, the Rattler. Yeah, it's just called the Rattler. SIG doesn't actually differentiate between the Rattler and the smaller Rattler. God forbid SIG ever make something intuitive, but the 5.5-inch Rattler. As you can see, these are essentially just pistol caliber carbines, which are usually around 20 to 25 inches, our traditional PDW size, but now have been shortened to around 16, sometimes even 15-inch overall length with a folded stock. This K breakdown is a good example as to why PCCs or 9mm full-size PDWs have completely fallen out of favor, at least from a serious use case perspective. A PCC K, or PDW K, is terminally quite similar to a standard PCC, while being a good chunk bit smaller. So if we take a look at this and tackle that bag question again, we're going to start to note that while we still are on the large end of things, we're reaching the point where the rifle doesn't require disassembly or a comically large bag, and we preserve the ability of the bag to be used as a bag. To actually carry things like food, water, medical, the computer you need for work, and items that, in those 95% of times where we don't need the gun, we actually need. Now, should the situation ever arise and you need to deploy it, while not exactly concealable or concealed, a PDW K is surprisingly easy to hide even outside of the bag, as it fits within the outline of the body, perhaps under an armpit with a sling, or Secret Service style with a jacket. Now obviously up close, this doesn't quite reach the threshold where you're going to fool anyone. You can't go to 7-Eleven and go buy a bag of Skittles with your PDW K under a jacket. You're going to get into trouble real quick. But it does allow them to be deployed when things go tits up without being 100% overt. This category is about as small as you can go before we need to make serious ergonomic concessions and jettisoning the ability to use rifle rounds. So with these, in a lot of ways, at least on paper, we have our cake and we can eat it too. We have something that is smaller than the PDW, something that stows even better in the car in home defense or stashed away like our PDW. We still maintain the usage of a rifle round, and when they're on body outside of the bag, they're far less in your face. But even if we look at PDW Ks and 300 Blackout like the Rattler, we shouldn't really view these as analogous to standard PDWs. I'll have a whole video on it soon with gel, assuming the gel doesn't melt in transit, but the PDW K 300 Blackout guns are not really rifles, both in terms of terminal and external ballistics. And when you do the math and we look at the performance, more closely approximate weaker lever gun rounds or spicy revolver handgun magnum cartridges.
If I'm going to commit to something in this category, it's probably going to be more something like a PDW K with an FRT, as we sort of teased on the footage. It's a really promising development, but honestly, I would give it about 6 more months to a year to mature, as they're extremely finicky and unreliable at this time and require a lot of tuning. But ultimately, the real reason you don't see a PDW K beyond me being a broke-ass bitch is I'd rather commit to a slightly larger standard PDW with full power rounds, or have the size advantages of a compact PDW in 9mm. Speaking of which, let's talk about compact PDWs.
And we're still in the creepy corner room because this is the only spot I can film right now. To the compact concealed PDW. This category isn't just filled by this Flux 365, though it may actually be one of the better options in this category, but also stuff like the TP9 or the Flux 320, or maybe even something like a VZ 51. VZ51, is it a 51? I always forget the number that leads at the end.
These things are really pushing the envelope of what is possible concealment-wise, checking all of those boxes, with the larger air quotes variants being around 13 and a half inches, and some of the smaller ones being 12 inches or even handgun sized. When we look at the bag situation, most PDWKs still need to fit in the upright, large main compartment of a bag, and then things sort of need to kind of nestle around it. But for many concealed PDWs, we can fit it in a subcompartment, which at minimum is very convenient, as they then don't shift around during movement and poke you in the back or whatever. It also doesn't give up the entire plot every time you pull something out of your bag in front of someone else. Hey bro, can I have some waters? Oh yeah, oh my god, is that a B&T APC 9K? Here, there's going to be no such issues. A Flux Raider, for example, can fit horizontally at the bottom of the bag, kind of out of the way, or even within the laptop sleeve area without stretching anything out. And their size very often means their suppressor can just be left attached, allowing for actual, genuine, quick deployment. In fact, there are a lot of bags that are designed for handgun quick deployment when you want to off-body carry that work just as well for many of these PDWs. I think perhaps most importantly, though, I can genuinely say that when I put a concealed PDW in my bag, I'm still able to use my bag fully 100% as a real bag. I can bring my laptop, snacks, jacket, water, medical, and more without having to fish and kind of move around a $2,000 hunk of aluminum. In this category, we are absolutely locked into a handgun round. As such, there's no reason not to run something like 147 grains for 9mm, or slower loads for anything else, and have natively subsonic rounds at all times without really any major sacrifice over 115s or 124 grains or supersonic loads. Now, of course, many people will lambast the lack of a rifle round, and that is absolutely fair. We are essentially only gaining controllability and consistency and ammo capacity over a handgun, and in many cases, that's just not worth the squeeze. But the real upsides do come into play when the gun comes out to play, being invisible at distance and vanishing into the outline of the body, being fully concealable with an overcoat, and with some types of concealed PDWs fitting in the holster and under a shirt like the Flux 365 and in some cases the VZ51, meaning we don't even need to worry about the bag at all.
Hey, what did you just read on your phone?
Oh, that Israel is attacking Iran and they're scrambling jets to intercept or something like that.
That sounds gay. Let's play some Magic the Gathering.
Okay, that's my classification video. PDW, PDWK, and the concealed PDW, each with their upsides and downsides. Rounding it out, for scenarios or situations where you're very car-centric or often going to and from work, doing chores or whatever, and have the potential of a road-based shakedown, or the 300 Blackout or 5.56 PDW is a really good choice, offering near uncompromised rifle performance, especially at closer distances, and capacity all in a package that can be used from the confines of a car, can be transported away via a dedicated bag, and in general makes a decent amount of concessions without losing too much of what makes it a rifle. However, interestingly, the threat index you often face is going to be inversely proportional to what you can actually bring to the table, which is why the conversation doesn't stop there and the PDW K and concealed PDW come into the picture. The K is very often just a short variant of the PDW, and thus the capability is roughly analogous, but just smaller at the sacrifice of terminal performance. While these do go further than the PDW, they have limitations, and your environment may very often require something even more subtle. The concealed PDW offers that more subtle option, with even more size reduction at the loss of the ability to use rifle rounds, but they can always be suppressed, and some might even fit in your pants. To be sure, before I send you off, the correct answer so very often isn't to just spend money, it's to get good with your handgun. After all, it's going to be similar performance with a lot of these setups, and something that is by far the best in terms of concealability. And I agree, if that is an option on the table, you should do that. But real talk, even now while times are good, most of you, yes, you listening, your handgun skills are somewhere between complete garbage and barely not a liability. Or maybe it is even a liability. And outside of lathering on thick with cope, there's virtually zero hope that as times get tough, you're somehow going to step up the plate and become a god tier with your handgun. Similarly, kind of assuming that you can rely on your handgun right up until it becomes so bad that you can use an overt rifle is also kind of ignoring a huge amount of the disaster or shit hit the fan matrix, where things are going to be bad, but not so bad that you could use a rifle. And that's the domain of the PDW, where times are bad, really bad, but not so bad that you can overtly carry a rifle, nor can you skip work.
Well. Oh no.